you don't ever want to be in a situation where you're like, man, this is really boring. Everybody sucks but me. And so I guess some people want to live that way, but I personally don't.
All right, thanks so much again, dude, for coming on. I've been looking forward to this, since we booked it. Pretty psyched.
Me too.
So I'm going to ask you a really hard-hitting question right off the bat. I'm just going for blood here.
I'm ready.
So I need to know this. Are you the first and only person in history to go on tour with a raccoon?
I would hope not. I mean,
I should clarify the raccoon's a pet, from my understanding, not like the headline.
Well, it's not. It's weird. It's really more. The raccoon Gizzard is more of an ambassador for Burman Sanctuary to tell people not to have pet raccoons.
Oh wow. Okay. Tell me more about that.
So basically, the whole idea of Burman Sanctuary, which is my wife Kara and I have a nonprofit 501c3 that we rehab critters, mostly in the possums, raccoons. We have a groundhog, and the idea is that you rehab them to be released. And this one particular lady held onto this raccoon for a long time, which you're not supposed to, because once these animals get accustomed to humans, they can't really survive on their own. So this particular raccoon, and Gizzard is a very special raccoon in terms of her temperament, but she's still a raccoon.
Okay.
And so basically, we now have a raccoon that lives with us, and I love Gizzard, but it's still a raccoon, so it destroys stuff nonstop. It's just like it's like having a toddler that is like a mutant that can climb and it has thumbs. I mean, it can get into anything. So, she's an ambassador for us to kind of preach, like, do not, if you see, don't take raccoons and thinking it's going to be like a pet. They're still not a pet, and so yeah. But in terms of the question of a traveling raccoon, I would assume some raccoons have probably jumped in tour bus trailers before and ended up on tour and gotten out or something, But yeah, maybe we are the first to tour with a raccoon in terms of being,
I think you should get in the Guinness Book of World Records or some shit for that. I think that's pretty rad. Like when I was a kid, that was my favorite animal, and I always wanted a pet raccoon. And then I got older, and I was like, oh shit, they're little gremlins. So.
Yeah, it's been really awesome. It's really, and as you guys know, it's like having an inspiring partner, in crime. I think it's very important. And Kara is a main source of inspiration to seeing how she can go in between being an artist and still maintaining this passion for helping.
Yeah.
Really helping these animals. So, yeah, I mean, again, I'm going to say it again. Do not get a pet raccoon, no matter how cute they are at first. So,
Awesome. So speaking of touring, I was wondering, you're touring all the time. You're on tour right now with Gov't Mule, right?
Yep.
So I was wondering what is your number one biggest tour hack? Not necessarily like music stuff, but just shit you've learned on the road that you're like, oh man, if I knew this 10, 15 years ago, my life would have changed.
Yeah. I mean, so the different levels of touring I started touring essentially driving myself back and forth between gigs regionally by myself or with most of the time with this drummer Dwayne Trucks that we put in thousands of gigs together touring this a modern day kind of Chitlin circuit, you could call it. And you go on the van touring, and that's a whole other touring situation. And now the bus touring, I'll just kind of go there. Is I think the main really important thing about the bus thing is maintaining you're like, if you have to go to the bathroom, tell the driver to stop. Don't hold it. Because
Okay.
you can't go to number 2. You can't take a shit on the bus.
Right.
And I know I've talked to some people that will hold it out of like, I don't want to bother the driver. So, just remember that, like, it's like a bus is like you're on a weird cruise ship with wheels almost. So it's like
Right.
where you can't shit. And so, just taking time to tell people what you need is the most important thing.
That's a good tip. Cause I feel like, yeah, I feel like I feel like I'd be one of those people like afraid to be like, hey, can you stop? Like, like I would hate to like fuck with the flow of the trip. So that's a really good tip.
Yeah,
I don't even want to ask how that lesson came about, but I'm sure it was gnarly.
I mean, it kind of applies for all levels, because the one thing when I was starting to touring a lot, and was I was also very timid about asking for things. And I think the big thing is, let's say you get called, you're about to go on tour, your first kind of sideman gig where you have a big production, is remember that all these bigger tours, there's a crew there on for a reason, and
Right.
we're all in it together. Like, I personally look at the crew as equals. I know some musicians and artists don't do that, and that's a real big pet peeve. So to me, it's like, okay, we have this amazing hospitality runner named Nicole. Her job is, I'll ask her a million questions. So I think the big thing is, if I would have told my 20-year-old self, is don't be scared to ask what you need, but also, like, you don't have to demand it. You can just ask it. It'll hopefully come.
Yeah.
And also getting a proper amount of sleep, which not. I mean, I'm a addict, and I haven't done narcotics for many years now. But if you if you are still on the party train, remembering that you still have to get rest, which is again kind of prioritizing yourself. I would go like, not. I mean, I was younger. It was like, I'm nonstop. I'm in this. We're sleeping on floors. We're sleeping in people's houses we don't know, and you're doing everything else you're doing when you're that young, going out to bars. And now, just looking back, it's like, even if you are doing that, just remember you still have to get some rest for your own sanity.
Yeah, as corny as it may sound, it's like I wish I told my younger self that too. I played a lot of rock touring situations, just gritty shit, and and it sounds so corny now to me, but I was getting a little older when I was touring, and I realized, like, I was fucking sore playing rock gigs. I'm a really active player. I like to move. And, the older I got, I was like, damn, I'm fucking sore. And then I realized how sleep was. And the corny part I'm getting at is you almost have to think of yourself like an athlete, right? Like your body is as much of the instrument as the actual instrument. Like a tool, calling yourself a tool, but you know what I mean? It's like, you got to take care of it. It's amazing how many musicians take such good care of their instruments, but just totally fuck up their lives.
I mean, I maintain a strong gym presence on the road. I go to mom and pop gyms still on the road 3 days a week.
Nice.
In the gym that I go to in Nashville is called Gym 5. It's a very special place. This guy, Adam Wright, runs it, who's a insane music aficionado / angel. And when I first going back out, he goes, man, I'm gonna look up all these gyms, and I'm gonna send you the links, and you're gonna go and maintain it. So that's another thing about the road, is coming up with your own ritual that involves things that are outside of music, and you can be by yourself. And this doesn't involve me going to a bar at 3 p.m. and getting hammered. It's like looking at more, like you said, more healthier ways of maintaining sanity.
I'm going to change directions a little bit here. I saw you play, I think it was, I want to say it was last year, with your project at the bitter end called Resonant Paths. No, it wasn't bitter end. It was New Blue. Resonant Paths. Yep. Yeah. And that I don't think that's the first time I met you, but you're playing with my buddy, Ryan Clackner, mutual buddy. You hired him. You had Kenny Grahowski on drums and Greg Osby. So, man, that was a fascinating gig because, you know, Clackner and Grahowski, I don't know if they had played before together but I knew together would be like killing it because they got a similar vibe. They got metal and they got jazz chops. Like, I was like, oh, that's going to be crazy. But then you threw in Greg Osby, who, when I think of Osby, oh man, when I was in college, he was like one of my idols, you know, like one of the co-founders of M-Bass. That's totally like out of left field for me when I saw that band. And then you, of course, you're a fucking chameleon. So what I want to know is what inspired that lineup? And number two, what's it like playing with Greg Osby?
Well, you know, my obsession with Greg and Gary Thomas goes back to my early 20s when this great sax player in Atlanta introduced me to their whole scene. You know, because I think there's always layers that go in with musicians and music, you know, and a lot of the stuff I was aware of the 90s New York, and 80s New York, you know, for a reason, you know, Gary and Greg weren't as well known and is in mainstream, you know. So I heard them. It was a revelation based on, wow, these guys are actually really improvising, you know, and it's really high level, you know, and it's, so I got obsessed with Gary and Greg, all their records and all the stuff they did with DJNet and the typical kind of rabbit hole stuff you would do when you like something. I try to find as much about it obsessively as I can. And, you know, my relationship with Clackner is very special. You know, I consider Clackner family as close to her brother as, you know, I mean, my wife jokingly calls him my husband and just her, you know, I mean, I love Ryan. And when we met, it's one of the first things we talked about was Greg and Gary.
Really?
You know, about music. Cause, you know, I look at Ryan and Kenny and I are these guys that have strong influence in extreme music, but also do other things. When I started a relationship with Greg was through Warren Haynes, because when Warren asked me to do his solo project on top of Mule, this is funny. Me and Ryan were going to see Tyshawn at the Vanguard. I get a phone call before we go in. I was like, I got to take this call. It's Warren. And Warren's like, hey man, you know, I Mule's about to take a little hiatus, but I want you to play my solo band. And I said, sure, because it's with Terrence Higgins, one of my favorite people and the best drummers ever, and John Medeski was going to play keyboards. Who, I mean, what's out saying? It's John fucking Medeski.
Damn, son.
So I thought that was the band, and then literally, this is crazy. This is when I'm still living in New York. We're riding around, me and my wife, and some Greg Osby comes on my Spotify. And I was like, oh man, I haven't heard this record in forever. And Karen's like, who's that? Oh, this is Greg Osby. This is blah blah blah. And all of a sudden, I get a text from Warren. Hey, I'm hiring Greg Osby to be in the band
while it's playing in your car.
Yeah, absolutely.
No shit.
And I about wrecked the car because, you know, I'm a true believer of, you know, manifesting and really believing in what you want for yourself. It goes back even if, hey, I want to take a shit right now. You know, ask and you shall receive. you know. And with Greg, I remember we show up to rehearsals. And he's like getting his horn out, and I walk over to him, and I can kind of tell he's like, okay, what's this fucking burly dude about to talk about? And I was like, Greg, I'm gonna get this out of the way. I'm a fanboy for a little bit, just so you know, it's not awkward. But you are one of my absolute favorite musicians to ever live. And so I developed this great repertoire with him touring with Warren, where you know, and this is just another, you know, like Warren Haynes is a band leader. It's like Warren wants he's not like what I think people would assume of him of being is like, oh, he's a southern rocker. That Warren's knowledge of music is beyond deep. You know, the bands he wants to put together. I mean, for the fact he hired me, Terrence, Badesky, and Osby to play his music means he wants things to go certain directions because none of these people are capable of putting the brakes on, you know.
Right.
And the more we would go out, I mean, towards the end, Badesky eventually he had some other stuff come up, so I got Matt Slocum to fill on keyboards too. I go way back with for years in Alabama in my band King Baby with him. And I remember these nights where on stage, Warren would give everybody a chance to kind of go really as far as they want, and the further the better with him, you know. So I think, a lot of the lead in to like me and Osby meeting, and then when I got become such great friends with Greg, I was thinking the whole time, I was like, man, if I could get Kenny and Ryan with Osby.
Yeah,
that would be some really cool stuff. So I wrote a few compositions, which were mostly loosely based things of more visual charts, where I would have some notation and then have like an idea, or scribble like this or whatever. And it was great. It was fantastic, and the first time Kenny and I and Ryan played together was, we actually have 2 albums recorded for my defunct label, 29th Street, that we need to put out. And it's crazy stuff. So, so that pickup was really special because I was moving the next day or something to Nashville on top of.
Right, that's right.
So, yeah.
Man, that show, I think we got some clips even of that show we'll throw in here if that's
Please.
Cool with you.
Greg, even like, again, it's what's so inspirational about guys like Greg Osby and Warren who are getting older is that they're still pursuing new stuff. Greg's ears and knowledge, it's like he knows so much about all styles of music. It's like, you be surprised, And it's like, I remember sitting him listening to some real extreme, playing some of Ryan's, like Vile Hate and some of his more extreme black metal, and Greg digging it. It's like, because you can, and it kind of proves my, I'm gonna go on a little tangent here.
Please, tangent away.
I think one of the biggest problems we have with musicians now is that, all these guys that think they're at that level, right, are the most closed-minded cats. And then you look at guys, Greg Osby, that literally can. He's a historian as well as a futurist, And I think that's the ultimate goal as far as me concerned. I want to be 70 years old, finding the young guys and trying to help them as much as I can, and hiring people that are going to push me, even though I've been around I might be 50 years older or something. Comparatively speaking, like, well, this is the state of this. And we have to do this, and we have to put our suits and ties on and go blah, 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 all this crap. It's like, just like, you don't have to do all that shit, So that's why
I love that tangent. I was going to ask you a follow-up question. You're talking about fanboying over Osby. And I got to admit, I kind of fangirled out myself when I realized that you were playing with Warren Haynes because, and I'll come to my question in a second, but I got to fangirl out with you for a second because I was one of those jam band girls growing up in high school. So Dave Matthews was my dude, you know, and I loved the Central Park recording with Warren Haynes. One of my favorite tracks was him singing Cortez the Killer.
Yep.
Killed me. Yeah, and when I found out you were playing bass with them, I was like, holy shit. I was just like, my mind was blown. So I still fangirl out. And I think you did share stage with Dave Matthews also. Am I correct? Did you play with him?
We did this MSG benefit for Asheville, and
that's what I'm thinking of.
Dave didn't sit in with us. But Dave, I got to talk to Dave, and he's such a sweet guy, an amazing musician.
So I'm fangirling out right now. And so my question, now I'll get to the question, is with people like Warren, Osby, meeting Dave Matthews, whatever your stance is. I know people are interested in all different kinds of music that listen to this show, but do you still, like, how do you get over the fanboying, if you will, when you're starting to play with them? Like, are you nervous? Does that go away as soon as you play? Tell me more about that process.
Well, I'm always going to be a fanboy. Yeah. I mean, I get nervous before every gig. To this day,
really,
you know, yeah, it's like, I mean, with Warren, you know, when he initially called me, it was a really interesting part of my life. You know, Karen and I moved back to New York from New Orleans. I was on the road with a guy, that did me wrong severely, and I could see the writing on the wall. Like, man, this gig's not gonna last much longer. And right at that time, Warren called me to fill in. Now it was Dave Schools, the bass from Panic, who recommended me. But when Warren called me, he was like, "Can you learn 45 songs by Tuesday? It's Sunday." And I said, "Of course I can." In my mind, I'm like, "Okay, I've done this before, but you know, this is not easy material. You know, there's no charts or any of that crap." So. But yeah, I was extremely nervous because, you know, more sense of, you know, I've been very blessed to be working with a lot of the older guys, which has a lot, I think, like, I'm not as nervous when I'm with my guys, you know, like, it's like when I play gigs with Clackner or like King Baby or these people that, or I can, you know, or like my peers, and it's like, I'm not as nervous because I know we got each other. We already know each other. But when I get called for a gig like that, I've never met Matt Apps. I've never met Danny Lewis. I don't know the crew. I don't know how they are. Or is it going to work? You know? So like, luckily again, a genius of Warren Haynes is, the first song we played, we just jammed. He's like, let's just jam an E.
Nice.
Boom. That's, you know, and that's my thing. I ran an improvised jam session once a week for 15 years. So it's like I improv. But the reason why I do everything is I'm an improv addict. Improvising is my true addiction. So through that, you know, every gig to this day, I'm still nervous because I think I'm lucky with that because, you know, there's so many amazing bass players that have played, like my heroes have played in all these projects, like, you know, with Mule, obviously the you know, Alan Woody, you know, one of the most innovative people to ever play electric bass, and you know, and it's people have asked me, like, do you get nervous about that legacy? To me, I think it's important that I push it and respect Alan's legacy, but also do my own thing and push it to where it needs to be after that time period. You know, it's the same thing with the Krantz years. It was like, wow, I mean, he's literally hired everybody from LaFave, Anthony Jackson, you know, Pino. It's like, you know, that list is, I can't really worry about comparing myself to that because those are the Hall of Greats, and he's hiring me, so I need to just focus on myself. You know, same thing with Jimmy Herring. You know, it's like when Jimmy had Neil Fountain O'Teal in his band for 15 years. It's like you can't. It kind of crushed me at first because that Jimmy was the first, and Krantz were the first kind of like bigger fusion guys I was working with, and I'm like, damn, dude, like you toured with Anthony Jackson, Wayne. Like, what am I doing here? Or like, Jimmy, you've been playing OTO for 30 years. It's like, okay, you want to hire me? That's fine. But I got over it just from lots of psychedelics and self reflection.
I love all of that, first of all. And something that just kind of put, not to go on a huge tangent, but something that popped up in my mind as you're talking is I realized it's kind of like a little bit of imposter syndrome, because obviously, dude, you're fucking amazing. You should be in that lineup. But when it's in your own head, it probably feels a lot different.
Oh my
I can
God.
respect that.
I mean, yeah, because then I'm like, I want to play like them so bad because it's like I've studied those guys so much and I can do pretty good impressions of those guys.
But they hired Kevin Scott.
And that's the problem.
Mentioned Wayne Krantz, and you were playing the 55 bar scene for a while with him. R.I.P. Rest in peace, 55 bar. Went there tons of times, which I'm sure so many people in the New York scene did. It had such a definitive vibe.
Yeah.
And I feel like New York City lost something huge with the closing of that place. So, two things I want to ask you. Can you describe how you felt on that scene, number one? And number two, is there anything close to that scene today that you found either in New York City or anywhere?
Wow. I mean, the ongoing joke, even, before I even lived in New York, was that every city had their own 55 bar. That was like the measuring, like for instance, when I was in Atlanta, when I was younger, the places I gravitated towards and, essentially started or whatever, where people would say, it's like the 55 bar of Atlanta, and that's still what happens. Like, oh, well, like right now in Nashville, there's a place called Wilburn Street Tavern. They book a lot of improv stuff. It's similar, but then there's this place, The Underdog, which is like the 55 bar of Nashville. It's like anything goes. It's kind of divey enough. All the musicians, real cats, hang out there. But that's the ongoing, or the Baked Potatoes, the 55 bar of L.A. So that's saying a lot. I mean, I honestly, the 55 bar and the scene with Krantz and all the gigs I got out of doing that was Mecca to me. I mean, I say this a lot. Colonel Bruce and Krantz are essentially is who I am, DNA, in terms of like how I look at things musically. And when I remember the first when Tim recommended me to work with Wayne, I wasn't living in New York,
Oh, right. Yeah.
And I never forget it. He, sent me an email. Hey man, can you be here Monday? And I was like, oh my God. And and that's another crazy story about really believing yourself and manifesting. Is I was sitting there at the time in my old house in Decatur with my ex-wife, and we had some huge fight, and I remember just sitting there and saying out loud, Wayne Krantz has got to call me so I can get out of
No
here.
shit.
And the email happened. Yep. And
what was the delta? What was the time frame on that when you said that, and then you got
10
the
minutes.
email? Shut the fuck up. So
maybe less than that.
So your delta is actually closing in because that happened first, and then the Osby thing was later, right?
I mean, I'm this is crazy talk if you don't believe in this stuff, but it's true.
I love this shit. Let's go.
When I first heard Colonel, I went, I'm gonna play with Bruce. It's gotta happen. It's gonna happen. That happened. Jimmy Herring's the same thing. Krantz, Mule. I remember when I first saw Deepest In, I was like, I'm gonna be up there one of these days in New Orleans playing with Warren. And there's a power in saying out loud, but also being dumb enough to believe it.
Yeah.
Because
you got to believe it. Yeah.
You have to believe it. And the problem with a lot of the things I've witnessed, especially in the New York scene in general, and why people kind of gravitated towards 55 Bar, well, the 55 Bar is a meeting ground for everybody who was killing it. One night you'd see Kurt Rosenwinkel hanging out, and then Krantz would be there, and then Donald Fagen might walk in, it's like, Cecil Taylor used to hang out there all the time. I mean, it's like, so that was a real melting pot of a scene compared to other places in New York that are strictly something. And the irony is that I don't, like I said earlier, I don't think there's a lot of progression in denying genre. It's like, because if for instance, like a guy like Ryan Clackner, go back to Ryan, in my opinion, is just the premier guitar player on the planet. But if you played a jazz hole, someone's black metal music they'd be like, I don't want to listen to this shit. But it's like, well, check this out. And they're like, who's that guy? So I think my upbringing of just growing up in an environment where you would meet some badass that worked at the carpet place. There's no ego, essentially, or you can't always just judge people by like one thing. So, I think the 55 Bar will never be replicated, and because that was a certain thing that happened. And there's a part of me that I get really sad sometimes thinking about that scene being away. Just as much I get sad about my scene in Atlanta not existing anymore. But that's progression, and I really hope there are some young cats in New York that I have not heard yet doing their thing at a place that will eventually take over, because it's like, eventually you get to the point where it's like, I'm 41 years old, and 10 years from now I'll be 51, I'll be 61. It's like, I think in terms of my involvement in a scene, it's not going to be how it was in my 20s or 30s, because it doesn't have to be. And I think I would rather have younger people do that, so I can go learn from them instead of being like, oh, well, because you got to the point with me having my jam session, I was like, am I going to run a jam for 20 fucking years? This is stupid. I got to get out. I got to stop. No matter how much it's going to make people sad and pissed, I was like, I got to stop doing this. I'm moving to New York,
You gotta evolve. Oh man, so many good points there. A side note, I feel like I'm like, as this podcast, as I record it more and more, I'm on this like side quest for like finding that feeling again of the 55 Bar like in New York. And I'm like, is it happening? I need to see what the young folks are up to, Kevin. We're about the same age. So
no,
like,
I went.
What is that generation up to?
There's this spot next to the Sultan Room I went to. I forgot the name of this place, but I heard there was a jam there. I walked in there. There's a bunch of kids in their 20s playing all this wild improvised music. It was packed full of kids. and I felt like a fucking old bastard, and people were kind of looking at me like, "What's this biker guy doing here?" That's a good sign. So
Hell yeah.
forgive me for not knowing what the name of the place was, but it was near the Sultan Room in Bushwick, where it happens
In
on
Bushwick.
once a week or something.
Oh man, if I can find it, we'll post it. You're giving me hope, man. You're giving me hope. Yeah, so actually I'm gonna circle around to your question. You kind of hit on it though. So back to Atlanta, Nashville, New York. It seems
New
like
Orleans.
New Orleans. Yeah, you've been able to build up really collaborative communities, like wherever you've lived. I feel like you're. I hate using this word, but forgive me for a corporate word. But I feel like you're a good networker and connecting people. So a couple of questions around this. So, does the city determine those communities and vibes, or do you just create that situation where you live? And then my second follow-up question is, how do you maintain all those relationships that you created in these different locations over the years?
I think I proved that you don't have to be. I mean, that was one of the most joyful things about when I first started playing with Wayne. Was the first gig I did with him at the P5 bar. Went to rehearsal. The rehearsal was with Josh Dion drums. Just met Josh. I didn't know. I knew Josh from like songwriter stuff, so I had no idea he's also like one of the greatest drummers on the planet. So when I show up to the gig, it's Nate Wood playing,
Okay.
who's a freak and and a huge influence. And but I'll never forget the looks of these people sitting down, like kind of look how I would have when I was younger, like run in the door, get your seat, and go, "Well, who the fuck is this dude?" And then when I remember when Wayne saying, "Oh, from Atlanta, Georgia," and people were just kind of like, "What?" And then I had a lot of pride in kind of proving a point, kind of what I preached for a long time was you can be anywhere, but as long as you establish your home base of who you are as a musician, and that takes a lot of sacrifice because there's not money in that. When coming up in Atlanta, that scene that essentially I started and it turned into its own monster, and every musician out of that scene is a pro. All of them are doing amazing shit. That didn't pay nothing for 14 years.
Right.
Nothing. I mean, $50 maybe. But in terms of the long-term benefits of putting me out there as who I am, that's what it was. Because I think people lose track where they want to achieve all these things without making sacrifice. It's impossible. And it's just there has to be sacrifice involved because when I was doing the gigs with Wayne once or twice a month, not living there, I was paying for my fare to come up to New York.
Holy shit.
And then it was a lot cheaper, but but still, it was like I would break even or lose a little bit of money,
Yeah.
But in long-term benefits for my soul, that's all I've ever really cared about. And I know it's there's which is always a whirlwind because I have passed up opportunities, quote unquote, that people thought were a mistake, but you have to go to your gut.
100%.
Because to me, I would rather do something else to make a living than do music that I don't want to play. I'm just not capable of doing it. I've tried.
100% agreed. Yeah.
Every time I've tried,
that'll kill it.
I've had really bad luck with it. Like I'm in terms of like Odin like fucking throwing me under the bus for making decisions out of my jurisdiction. I mean, seriously, the two times I've taken gigs based out of just pure financial gain have bit me so hard. Like literally, this one time, did a tour, paid an insane amount of money at the time for when I was younger, and I remember being like, "Man, that was really horrible," but I got this money. I mean, a week later, huge car problem.
Holy shit!
All of it to the car. So I mean, I just think that there's music is first and foremost a healing ritual, and that's not a very popular thing to say now because of the business. But first and
Yeah.
foremost, you got to really believe in what you're doing, or even who you're sidemaning with. Because
Oof.
again, like if I gave, like I've told this to even Warren talking to him, it's like if I ever lose the spirit to do this, I'll do something else.
Mm.
Even if I, at this point, I've been playing out since I was 11, so it's my whole life. But if I woke up tomorrow, I was like, you know what, I'm retiring. I'm gonna do something else. I'll do it.
Hmm.
So once I got rid of the identity of thinking music is who I am. No, music is an outlet for my shit. You
Mm.
know,
I
and
love
the
that.
networking thing is just a natural thing because I'm just not scared of like if I like for instance like how I met Clackner was literally in the same week I heard Ty Sean talk about him and Austin White, who I ran the label with. I was like, I gotta just connect with this guy. And I was nervous. I had him a DM on Instagram. I was like, man, you're absolutely incredible. You should link. And he goes, well, I know who the fuck you are, bro. Like, and so that's how it all started. So, and sorry to just keep tangenting here, but
Oh,
when I was
tangent away. I love it.
when I was younger, this producer named Clay Harper told me that because again, like my 20s were I got my ass kicked so hard, like it was brutal, and between relationships and addiction and gigs and identity of like what am I doing, and this producer named Clay Harper told me this, man, write down 10 people you want to work with and contact them. What's the worst that could happen?
Mm.
And that's always been my philosophy is like, you know, um, if I am able to open a door to something, I'm bringing in the crew. They're coming,
Bringing in the crew. I love that, dude.
because I mean, again, it's like, yeah, like it's like the idea, like what's exciting about me for that gig you saw at New Blue was the fact that like, Greg and Ryan get to play off each other, and then Greg and Kenny get to play off each other, Ryan and Kenny. So it's like, to me, it's always, even the way I play music, I don't listen to myself. Like, I'm the last person I'm listening to in terms of like the big picture, and that's the way I view, I guess, networking or whatever you want to call it. Is if I see two people need to be hooked up, I'm gonna make it happen. And my wife Kara is if not better than I am at it, what she
Hmm.
does. So it's interesting how we both are these connectors, and it does get exhausting. I mean, it does. I mean, I was thinking the other day, it's like because my whole big thing now is whenever I see a young bass player on Instagram killing it, I'd send them a DM and say, "Here's my number. If you
Mm.
need anything, you talk about anything, I got you." So it's like, people joke about it, but I'll send you a screenshot. I mean, my phone, and Ryan will tell you, it rings and texts nonstop. So it does get exhausting, but I think it's just important because that's just like what I've always done, even when I was a kid. So it's just who I am at this point.
I'm gonna pivot again into some since we're both bass players. I do have some bass questions, some that I want to pick your brain about, nerd out a little bit. So in my opinion, I think a lot of people agree with this. I see you like that gig we talked about with Grahowski, Clackner, Osby. You're able to play out, quote unquote, out without losing the pocket. So when the music gets that abstract, right? What is your key anchor? What do you focus on to keep yourself in line and deliver the music? You mentioned you don't focus on yourself, but what's going through your head when it gets out?
I don't know. It's weird. I've learned a lot about playing for stuff I don't like. Like,
Oh, tell me more.
I've there's been plenty of times where I've seen people play in situations that I go, you know what? I don't want to do that. Like, especially in improvising sessions. Like, we're all huge into that music, and so I would say inspiration to me in terms of like in an ensemble improvised setting. A lot of it came from seeing guys that really weren't great at it first in person and going, man, I really don't like it when this person, the bass player, just emulates what's happening all the time, not creating a counterpoint, or man, why is that guy playing so much at this point, not this point? So, again, it's just a lot of trial and error, and it just, that's really all I can say. I mean, I don't, you know, I don't, I have fucked up so many times that if we don't learn from it, then you're kind of fucked. I think that's one of the things is I've just given up to whatever music is and accepted that it's that I'm going to be good some days and really crappy some days, and
being okay with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, improvising is like the funnest. I mean, it really separates the to me, a real artist is like, I mean, I can sit here and compose these sections, and that challenge in that being a great composer is finding the right people to pull it off then. But live, it's like anybody can improvise. So what separates great improvisers from other people? And I think it really is the idea of accepting, you know what, I'm going to go for this, and this might be completely terrible, but guess what? These guys got my back. So I think that's a lot to do. It's like who you surround yourself with, because if you're really frustrated, I tell this to people, ask me all the time: should I move to New York? I always say yes, even though I would never live there again personally. And I did my time, but I would never tell a young aspiring musician not to go do that, because you gotta. It's like you can't have that small fish, big ponds thing your whole life.
Oh, 100%.
You gotta experience, like, I mean, it's so important to be on stage going, I'm the weakest link here. This is fucking great. I'm learning it's like you don't ever want to be in a situation where you're like, man, this is really boring. Everybody sucks but me. And so I guess some people want to live that way, but I personally don't.
I 100% feel that. Oh, dude, I love it. You play so many different styles of music, and I know you play obviously electric bass, but did you ever play upright bass at all, or any other instruments?
I had a brief period with playing acoustic. Yeah.
Okay.
My grandfather was a very accomplished bass player. I never met him, but he was from Seartown, Georgia. J. Paul Scott. He played with Ella Fitzgerald and Mel Torme. And then during World War II, he joined and just didn't play professionally after that. He just did like weekend stuff for the rest of his life.
Wow.
So I had his bass for a while, and that bass is currently in New Orleans. I'm getting it back.
Okay.
In 2 weeks or a week from now.
That's exciting.
But I if you want to, this might be controversial take, but I think that, like, when it comes to doubling, it's like there's a lot of guys that can double well, play acoustic and electric well. But there's always, it's like once you dedicate to the point of getting good on an upright, there's still, you're kind of leaving out things with electric. Same thing with electric, And it got to the point for me personally, living in Atlanta, being younger, and when I was going through my really hardcore learning the vocabulary of quote unquote jazz, that I realized, man, I am more into this other stuff, and I want to dedicate my life to that. And again, I've studied a lot of it. I've studied Jimmy Garrison and Charlie Hayden and Ray Brown, and I love all of them. I mean, and that's another thing about New York City. It's like there are so many insane acoustic bass players in New York. It's just insane. You go to a jam, you go to Ornithology, a jam session. Everyone that shows up, you're like, well, that's world class, And I remember one night I was there watching the session, and this bass player recognized me. Well, come play. I was like, no, and he thought I was like thinking I was above it, which is strange. And I said, bro, I haven't touched acoustic in years.
Yeah.
And it's just all due respect. Like that's a whole other ball game,
Yeah, I think having acoustic upright bass as your main instrument, it's almost like having, it's going to sound weird, but I think you'll understand where I'm going with this. It's like having another partner, another spouse. Like it demands your attention. It's very physical. You got to put in work every day. It'll kick your ass. It hurts. Well, it's getting a little weird. It's like an abusive partner.
It's
This
true,
analogy,
though.
it just went off the rails. But I totally feel you. I don't play as much as I quote unquote should. That's not it at all. I still love playing. But I usually gravitate towards my 73 Fender P bass. Just because I can pick it up.
At 73, that's one of the best years.
Yeah, that's what you got too, right? It's my child. So I have to like separate my upright from it. They get a little jealous, but yeah, anyhow, it's just easier to pick up. But God, I love my upright. I can never part with it. It's just, I feel like my soul's in that, but I'm like, you just beat me up, baby. Like
I know.
It's a very physical instrument, and not to get on another tangent, but there are differences between male and females. Females, we tend to be a little shorter, a little not as muscular, and that thing kicks my ass, but God damn it, I love it. But anyhow, super interesting. So not exactly a bass tangent, but I also know that you have a deep knowledge of 60s and 70s music. So besides the obvious influence of like Bernard Purdie, what do you think makes that era of music so fun and interesting?
I mean, it was a Wild West.
Love it.
I mean, electric bass wasn't even a thing then.
Yeah.
I mean, there wasn't some proper way of doing shit like there is now. I think Frank Zappa's quote about the old record execs that were these fat, white guys didn't know what the hell was going on that would give people breaks were actually better than their kids because their kids have an idea of what's cool. And I think as far as 60s and 70s, it was just everything was different in the world. I mean, it was, it's like there was so much progression happening that music reflects it. And there wasn't a real industry back then that like it is now. So, I mean, a big breakthrough moment I had studying electric bass and getting into the old stuff was at the time I was, I practiced one finger per all this crap, like almost like a Berkeley method of doing things, a technique, and I could never get these parts right. I do the notes, and I realized, my technique is too good, so I had to, transfer over to like thinking like, okay, how are these guys playing electric bass in the 50s and 60s? There wasn't a method. Most times it was a guitar player that got forced to play, or it was an acoustic jazz bass player that didn't want to play it. So electric bass is like the ultimate bastard,
it really is.
and no one, it's like, what is it? It's not acoustic. It's not electric guitar. It's like this weird hybrid that is still very young. I mean, let's think about this in perspective. Chuck Rainey's still alive, and that would be the equivalent of like a guitar player hanging out with Django. In terms of the instrument, good point.
Yeah,
we still have these electric dudes. Jerry Jermont's still alive. Like these guys that who basically are the DNA of the instrument are still around. And it's some of them have passed, but it's a really interesting perspective to think about. Like a guy like Chuck or Jerry or George Porter Jr. That's like having Charlie Parker still alive. You play alto, you go talk to him. So it's the same kind of deal.
I've never thought of that. That's such a good point.
Because bass is, in my opinion, harmonically, it's way more important to know your genres than it is harmony to a certain extent. Now, mind you, I've beaten my head on the harmony wall for years and whatever, but really, in terms of playing the instrument, knowing, like, because if you're playing reggae, there's already a set harmony involved without thinking about it. If you play rock and roll, there's set harmony in terms of technique or whatever. So I don't know. I think genre is the most important thing for electric bass.
got one more question for you. I feel like it's going to open a can of worms. We kind of touched on it before, but dude, so many stories. I mean, you have one epic story, in my opinion, that I really want to hit on, but you just touched on so many awesome synchronicities that have happened in your professional career. And I just, man, I think someone out there, maybe you should just do, dude. I think you could write a book or do some kind of documentary on your story, because you have so many good ones. And my favorite one that I didn't know about you until I, brushed up on your history, Kevin, and stalked you a little bit, is that I didn't know you you moved to a new city as a teenager. You moved to Atlanta, right, to hunt down your musical guru, if you will, Colonel Bruce. You hit on that before, based on a single record. I know the story is out there. And again, it sounds like a fucking movie to me, man. That is so epic. And that quest, I feel like it's missing in today's world. And I want to know, in your opinion, what you're seeing out there, like in a world of social media, like TikTok, like Instagram, LinkedIn. I don't even know if musicians really use it, but does that kind of mythic pursuit still exist for people, younger people out there, do you think? Or do you think that quest has been sucked out of the life of music?
More accessibility with social media means less magic can happen, because it's going to be there. It's like, when I was growing up in Dothan, Alabama, I mean, the jazz selection was bleak at best, and of course, if the jazz selection is bleak, there's no metal selection. So, I would have to go order a CD with my hard-earned money, and live in it for a while, because I didn't have accessibility. And the thing with Bruce, like now it's in one sense easier to connect. Now it's like, oh, this Ryan Clackner guy, what's he about? I'm just gonna send him a message and see what he says. So that's beautiful, but the magic of it kind of falling into place is going to be taken away. Because the idea that Bruce found me, that's the way I look at it, in this flea market. And I ended up, because like I've said this before in a podcast, like I had no desire to be in Atlanta when I was in my teenage years. I didn't know what the fuck was going on there. I want to be in New York, baby.
Yeah.
My mom lived in New York, and a lot of this has to go with having such supportive parents. And the thing is, I didn't grow up wealthy, and they were musicians, and but they were in full support of like giving me the confidence, because it's like I think we lose. I mean, God, there's such a big scene. Here's a little tangent off of that, but
yeah,
parenting now, and it's like, I know some people that have parents that are just like, I'm just gonna throw money at them and tell them to shut the fuck up. But my parents, as flawed as all parents are, David and Laura, they were extremely supportive in terms of the confidence of telling me you can do this. And looking back, it was like I didn't have a safety net to fall into. I just did it, And I think that, going back to the social media thing, now I can go research. Okay, what are the hot clubs, jazz clubs in Atlanta? At the time, I didn't know a damn thing when I moved there. I moved there to play with this shitty band that took advantage of me. And I was living in the suburbs, because that's what they said. And I was playing just shitty sports bars in Roswell and Alpharetta. And then going to row them on the weekend. And I heard about this place, the Five Spot, though, downtown Little Five, the forbidden Little 5 Points, that 20 years ago was still pretty rough. And my first time walking in there, I was like, wow, this is amazing. It was sheer chance that Project Object was playing, so Ike Willis from Zappa's band was there. So there's a lot of synchronicities that happened based on a leap of faith. And I think now it's leap of faiths are kind of don't really happen, because you can look everything up. You can literally ChatGPT, how much do I need to make or save to move to Los Angeles in a year? He'll go, here's everything you need to know, which is good. But to me, like, your 20s are meant to be a complete, utter fuck up, or you're not going to be an adult. I'm sorry. Like, and I'm not advocating the shit I did, because I mean, the irony about some more connection with Clackner. This is basically a Clackner tribute podcast at this point.
It happens.
It happens. Is we both realize we're in the same substance, and I learned a lot from that, honestly, and I don't ever want to take that part of my life away because it's who I am today. And I just think that when you have so much accessibility now, it's kids are so scared to fuck up. Like, I teach a lot of people I'm off the road, and a lot of them are from the ages of 20 to 50. I have this really amazing young bass player named Aiden I'm teaching. It's like 16. It's just going to be, he's already insanely good. But, it's like, I asked them what they're doing on their weekends or playing, and it's just nothing's happening, And I think a lot of it has to be just being scared to fuck up. It's such a societal thing now, not to fuck up,
Yeah, and sorry to interrupt, but this day of age, the downfall of social media and stuff is, if you say the wrong thing online, people are going to disown you. I see it. I literally see it happen all the time. Unfortunately, that's just the way we live. The era we live in. But yeah, the young people are like. I agree with you. They got to be scared to fuck up. Sometimes I'm scared to post shit, and I just don't post shit, and I think that's bad too because I'm censoring myself, and I'm like, I don't want to fucking censor myself.
Well, and but then it's. But I'm sorry to interrupt, but like
no, please.
But then to me, it's like, I remember seeing this post the other day about. It was like, of course, the algorithm has me all over the place, and one of the things was like, don't be scared to post everything. Yes and no, because it's like, I post a lot of stuff, and I've had certain fans send me messages saying, all sorts of shit about what I posted on things outside of music. I'll just leave it at that. And to me, it's like, it's the same thing with the modern idea of a cell phone. Why do people have to have access to me 24 fucking hours?
That is a good point.
Why?
Yeah.
I mean, it's such that's the downfall. It's I joke about it, but like, it's these people that are essentially, inventing these things are not. They have endless amounts of money. They know human psychology. They know what addiction is. They know exactly what button to press. And you're going to keep spending all your money to basically feel miserable. And that's essentially what an iPhone is. Pre-iPhone years, it's hard for me to remember what I was like, because now it's like, well, there's good and bad. Yes, there's good and bad. Like, the good thing is I'm doing this podcast with you on my iPhone right now.
Right.
But in terms of the long-term effects, would it have been a lot cooler 20 years ago that you guys had a separate building studio that was operating like on the radio or something, and it's like, we're having Kevin come in and he's passing through town. It's like, so I don't know. It's like there's good and bad. It's at this point, it's just gray area. It's
balanced too. I mean, I remember emailing and everyone I contact, I'm like, hey, if you're going to be around the area in person, let's make it happen in person, because that's always my number one. I mean, this is awesome. Don't get me wrong, and thank you again. But yeah, person to person, there's nothing like it.
No.
And the other thing I wanted to hit on that I hope is still alive in younger people. I remember, and I don't know if my parents are not musicians, very corporate type, love them to death. It's very supportive, but I'll never forget when I told them I wanted to major in music and move to New Jersey, where I went to William Patterson. They're like, what are you going to do with that degree? And I remember saying, I don't know. I'm just going to figure it out. And I was so adamant about that. I was just like, I don't know. I'm going to figure out. I'm going to make it happen. And when you talked about ChatGPT, like people looking up like how much I need to make to move or whatever, I'm wondering, if Lindsay back then would have seen it, those numbers, I'm a nerd. I would have ChatGPT. I would have looked it up. Yeah. I wonder if that would have hindered me, or if I still would have had the balls to be like, nope, fuck it. I don't care. I'm going anyhow. So the hopeful part of me is that younger generation still has the balls to be like, fuck it. I'm going live. I'm going in.
Let's hope so.
Yeah.
I definitely have confidence they are, but it's definitely an aspect of that where I've thought about, you know, like, and that was the kind of magic of New York too.
Mm.
But the other cities was you didn't know what you're gonna run into at what time,
Mm-hmm.
or what,
Literally. Walking down
literally
the street.
walking down the street, getting a coffee, playing a gig. It's like now these people can just pick and choose. They can go to your Instagram feed and go, that guy sounds good. You want to go on tour? Or compared to like, I'm gonna go down to the 55 bar and see these assholes, see if I like them. You
Yeah.
know. So, but streamlining it, it's like, and that's the one thing I've noticed with some younger guys who are successful at that is that they are getting life changing work from their Instagram post.
Yeah.
So good for them. But you know, to me, I just know, I've lived. My uncle Jay Scott was a session sax player. He's an incredible musician, and I remember asking him when I was younger advice. And he told me, he's like, well, your grandpa told me to learn to read, write, fake, jam, and the dancing poodle always wins. And I went for years like, what the fuck does that mean? And I figured it out that no matter how killing you get at what you do as a musician, especially an artist, musician, the poodle with the balancing plates on her nose is going to win the talent show. And that's been my philosophy for a long time. Musicians, is like, and that's why you can't concern yourself with what you're. Essentially, I put it this way: like, I support all my peers to the point where I'm like, you guys crush it, get happy, get your money, make your influence. But at the end of the day, it's like, I really don't give a shit, because because it's like I'm consumed in getting my own stuff happening. Now that doesn't mean I don't support them. That doesn't mean I don't buy their records. That doesn't mean I, share their things because I want to support them because they're my peers.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it's I don't have to say names, but there's plenty of people that are worldwide successes that aren't as good as somebody you might know down the street or in your own house or whatever. So you can't be concerned with a dancing poodle because it kind of goes back into, not, like Colonel Bruce says, take yourself serious, take what you do seriously, not yourself.
Oh man.
Because a dancing poodle always fucking wins. It doesn't matter.
I love it.
It's like, I mean, look at throughout history. We all praise Coltrane now. Yay, the Saint Coltrane. When he came out, everybody hated him. Ornette Coleman was beaten for playing the way he did. That's a dream. It's like you play so ahead of your time that you get popped in the face for playing stuff that people understand. So I mean, I just think we have to remember that. Like it's not a music is your own thing, and no one really knows your own thing. I don't. Nobody. I mean, you could put your music out. You don't know. I don't know what your intention is or what you're doing it for.
Yeah, man, that was amazing. I saw none of that coming. Never heard of the Dancing Poodle Analogy, but I'm stealing that for life.
Please.
So thank you for that.
I'm not gonna mention names. There's plenty of people I look and I know some of them. Well, okay, motherfucker,
All right, don't get a big dance poodle dance.
Yeah, don't get your little ego about what you're doing. So
hey, can we start a bass duo called Dancing Poodles?
Let's do it.
I love it.
I'm
in it. Gotta dance like, gotta dress like a fucking poodle. Nah, I won't go on a furry tangent. But
well, Kara can make the costume, so.
Kevin, thanks so much for doing this. Do you have anything coming up or anything you want to shout out?
I do. So Jazz Fest is coming around the corner. I've got 10 gigs in 3 days, 4 days there. So I posted my calendar. So if you're down there, come check out some of the stuff. On May the 30th, I have a Resonant Paths gigs in Atlanta at Eddie's Attic. 2 sets. In the first set's at 8:15. That lineup is me, Ryan Clackner, Greg Osby, and Isaac Eady. And Isaac is a drummer from TTB. And I've known Isaac since he was probably 20. He's an incredible drummer. So that's the main thing I'm plugging is the Resonant Paths gig in Atlanta. Maybe Nashville if I can get this gig finalized, but it might be just one gig. But that and I got a bunch of records I got to put out that me and Ryan have recorded, but I don't have any release dates. I got a trio record with Clackner and Matt Chamberlain under my own name, and then just stuff with Kenny. So, but I don't have a real way to plug it. I don't have a date to release it, but so
keep an eye out for that.
Keep an eye out
down the line.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please visit birchgrove.io. It's the home base for our record label, Birch Grove Media. You can buy a vinyl record or a digital album and sign up for our newsletter where you'll receive notifications about future events and releases. Also visit podfuelmedia.com. I'm one of the owners of this company, and if you like how this podcast was produced, we do that for our clients: audio, video edits, syndication, consulting, and startup for a new podcast. So book a call with us and we'll get your podcast going right away. You can also go to buymeacoffee.com/birchgrovemedia and leave us a tip if you'd like. Thank you very much.